of finance and the rest of them. So today we're going to be looking at impact of blockchain in the e-commerce sector. So let's look at what blockchain can do. What are some of the impact that blockchain is really doing in the e-commerce sector? We know that with the blockchain, with internet being in place, a lot of things are going online and the transactions and businesses are happening online. So let's see how blockchain technology can still play a role in this sector. So not wasting much of our time, let me welcome our guests for today. I have with me Zakaria Hassanin, who is a BRI Middle East Egypt ambassador. Hello, can you hear me, Zakaria? Can you hear me? Zakaria? Okay, while we wait for him, also joining him is Eric Osuora, founder of Forma. Eric, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, nice having you on the show. Thank you very much. And for our audience, you know how we do it. If you want to know more about this ecosystem, do well to follow Coinese Extra TV across all our social media at CNTV1, and also do well to follow OKX Africa across all their social media, Twitter and Telegram at OKX Africa to get the latest info about what is happening. And if you have questions about this discussion and any other thing around blockchain, do well to follow them to ask your question and also know what is happening over there. So we'll go for a short break. When we return, we dive into the discussion proper. We'll be right back.
I apologize. I don't think I'm getting through to your audio.
I don't know if Mr. Rick can hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
So we are welcome to the show. I don't know you were not hearing what I was saying. So I was trying to ask you, when we talk about e-commerce, what do you actually mean by e?
Um, so if I think I lost you there, but I think you were asking me what I mean or what is my understanding of e-commerce, correct?
Yes, yes.
Sure. So e-commerce is simply a business model that allows companies and individuals to buy and sell products and services over the internet, right? So that enables companies, individuals to conduct their business over, like over their laptops, over their computers, over their mobile phones and tablets, pretty much any device that has access to the access to internet connectivity. And then there are different models around e-commerce, where we're talking about where these businesses can be conducted via business to business, business to consumer, consumer to consumer, consumer to business, right? So that's pretty much what e-commerce is all about, and that's how the technology has now evolved in the handling of commerce today, especially as you see how the COVID-19 pandemic has struck a couple of years ago. It has really made e-commerce very, very, very popular. So that's what e-commerce is all about.
Okay, okay, nice one. Before we move to some of the ways blockchain can play a role, let's look at some of the challenges that are facing the e-commerce sector. We could see from different angles. There are some challenges, cybersecurity, and all the rest of them, transparency. So, what are some of those challenges that are facing the e-commerce sector?
Yeah, if you look at the e-commerce sector, if you look at it from depending on the region you're looking at, right? Every region has its own challenges. If you look at the high-income countries, challenges around scalability or internet connectivity, those are not prevalent in high-income countries, right? What you tend to see, most especially in high-income countries, is when it comes to security, right? Cyber security issues, and scammers, right? So these are the challenges you tend to see on the high income countries. Now, when you now look at things from the perspective of the developing world, now they have a multitude of issues. When you're now looking at internet connectivity, when you're looking at scalability or sustainability from a perspective of a lot of these businesses or small, medium-sized businesses don't have enough capital or access to finance to fund or even allow them to conduct their businesses online or over the internet, right? And then you now talk about internet access or internet penetration in some of these regions. So predominantly, if you look at regions across, like in Africa, these are the challenges you tend to face, not just from a technology or skills perspective, but then you look at the challenges when it comes to, as I pointed out, access to capital, right? Because starting an e-commerce business is capital intensive because you have to invest in the technology, and you have to obviously invest in making sure your business is sustainable from an operations perspective, right? So these things, it's really different from the perspective of where you're looking at these challenges, right? Especially when you compare both worlds. In the high income countries, they have more opportunities based on they are more advanced in technology, but again, they are exposed to some of these cybersecurity and hacks and all whatnot that we tend to see today in the media.
Okay, interesting. Having been able to know about some of these challenges, do you think that the steps that are being taken by companies or organizations or governments towards tackling or solving these challenges is the right step, or what should be done?
Yeah, I mean, the government can only do so much, right? I mean, the private sector has a role to play there as well, right? So they are doing their best. I think predominantly when you look at Africa, you have to first of all see there isn't a lot of the technology, exposure in these regions, right? So you have to then look at how do you then solve some of these challenges there when the technology is not prevalent there, right? Don't get me wrong,
Yes.
in Africa, we have like Jumia, Konga, they're the big players in the e-commerce space today, but then how many other platforms are out there that can compete at that level, right? And then not explaining the fact that internet penetration is still an issue. So the government has to obviously allow the private sector to come in to actually help. For example, work with the telcos, right? Create reduce the barrier for them to create the opportunities for businesses to flourish, to enable them to put out their marketplaces or their e-commerce sites, to be accessible to the globe, right? So the government has a role to play, the private sector has the role to play, but primarily, I think there has to be synergy between both institutions, right? The government has a role to play, but they can't do it alone. The private sector has a role to play as well, especially when it comes to, you
Hello,
know,
I can't hear you again.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So there has to be synergy between, or a collaboration between the government and the private sector in actually achieving this. But if they go at it in silos, then the challenge towards addressing these issues, becomes very tasking, right? So the private sectors have a role to play, but the government has to make it easy for them to actually play the role that they have to play to actually alleviate some of these challenges at the end of the day. But in addition to it, the consumers themselves have a role to play. If I am purchasing something on an e-commerce platform, there's still a bit of responsibility that I have to play as well, in terms of making sure I'm not reusing the same passwords that I use for every other platform or every other site that I'm visiting. I'm using it on the same e-commerce, and I'm putting in my credit card information, and then that exposes you to cyber threats, right? So we have a responsibility to play as a consumer as well, and then if everybody contributes, I think that would go a long way towards addressing some of these issues at the end of the day. And I think I just lost your audio. Nope, I still lost your audio.
Hello?
Yep, I can hear you
Can you hear me
now.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to say, you said that the three parties have a role to play. The private sector, the government, and even the consumer themselves have a role to play when it comes to some of these challenges facing the e-commerce sector. So, how are you playing a role in this ecosystem? Let me hear from you your own role in the ecosystem.
Yeah, so Afoma is a social enterprise that is leveraging blockchain technology and some of its use cases to actually enable the small, medium-sized enterprises. I'm not. Can you hear me? I want to be sure that you can hear me just
I can
fine.
hear you. I can hear you. Please
Okay,
go
good.
ahead.
Good. So where Afoma comes in is purely from the fact that we have looked at how the developing regions today cannot scale their businesses across their local economy, right? Especially around Nigeria. We see a lot of, I've conducted business, I live in Canada, and I conduct some businesses in Nigeria. And one of the things, the challenges that I face, for one, is where I'm trying to buy a product from Canada, and there are no online presences for a lot of businesses, right? The big ones you can see is probably Konga and Jumia, and it ends there, right? And so we have to find ways. Excuse me. We have to find ways
Sorry.
where we can enable small, medium-sized businesses, and that's where Afoma comes in. But our primary focus at Afoma is where we've looked at um, um, the handicraft space, and we've seen it is severely being neglected, especially in regions, in the developing regions. So we want to come into that space to enable Africa, and other developing countries, right, within across the globe. So our contribution is where we will build out a multi-vendor e-commerce marketplace for the handicraft, and we will leverage cryptocurrency as an option for payment. And we also want to create what we call a sharing economy, where because of the neglect to supporting the handicraft space, we want to be incentivizing people who support these artists or artisans wherever they may be. So that's one of the things we intend to leverage our community-based token to drive. So as you buy a product on our site because you're trying to support artisans and because we want you to support artisans or artists wherever they may be, we're going to incentivize you in crypto, right? Which you can hold as a store of value, or you can leverage it within the Afoma ecosystem itself. And we also want to incentivize artisans and artists that put out their products, their handmade products, because one of the things we also like is when you look at regions, in some of these regions, again in Africa, a lot of these businesses have no exposure to e-commerce, right? So a lot of them would lack the understanding, would lack customer service orientations, or lack the ability to conduct this business the way some consumers in high-income countries are used to. So we want to encourage them to learn. We want to encourage them to change their behavior, to understand how to conduct businesses. And as they are doing that, and they're doing it exceptionally well, we will incentivize as well in crypto. So Afoma comes in to reduce the barrier of entry. Remember, it's very important because, as I pointed out a few minutes ago, we have to be able to reduce barriers of entry or operations for businesses and individuals. So Afoma is going to build an ecosystem that obviously starts with our e-commerce platform, where we can reduce barrier of entry, reduce operational costs for our artists, artisans across the globe. Where all they simply need to do is take a product, list it. We will build established trust for them, because that's another factor that we see in Nigeria or in other countries where trust is an issue. So if you want to conduct a business and you have to ship a product to a foreign country, you have to pay upfront with a shipping company. And a lot of people don't have the capital to drive those kind of operational costs. So if we can step in to establish that trust, to reduce the barrier of operations for small, medium-sized companies, that's where we play a major role. All they simply need to do is take their product list, someone from any part of the globe.
Mr. Eric,
Yes.
because of our time, can you hear me because of our time?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just so sorry to cut you short because of our time. Let's proceed. Maybe we can sum up that 1 minute so we can proceed.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm just simply saying is where we can leverage our technology or our ability to help them establish trust and allow them to scale their businesses beyond their local economy, and where their products can be shipped to any part of the globe, and allow them to earn a more dignified pay in a foreign currency, but leveraging crypto also to be a form of payment at the end of the day, so that they can recoup a significant amount of their income, because it's eliminating all the intermediaries that taking a significant portion of their income when they make a sale through some of these platforms.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eric. I have to cut you short here. Sorry. Thank you very much. Let's move to next question that I have. Sorry, I have to cut you short here. Let's look at, we'll see how you're really making impact in the ecosystem. Let's look at how blockchain is really making an impact when it comes to the e-commerce sector. So, in the area of security, the area of payment and transparency, how do you think blockchain is bringing all these on board?
Yeah, so you see, these are purely features of blockchain technology. Now, when you apply it to e-commerce, it really comes down to the use case. In our case, where blockchain provides, Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Mr. Eric?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Eric?
Yes, I can hear you.
I don't think he can hear me. I don't know if he's having some challenges there. So let's look at. I was trying to get from him some ways that blockchain can play a role in the e-commerce sector. How blockchain is really making impact in this amazing sector, the e-commerce sector. So we know that blockchain cut across different sectors. Like I said earlier when we are starting the show, healthcare, finance sector, all around agricultural sector. So looking at one of the challenges, like he made mention, Mr. Eric, is cyber security, being able to be secured. He made mention using different password and all the rest of them. So when it comes to security, I wanted to get his opinion on that, how blockchain is trying bringing security on board. We know that
Can you
also
hear me?
blockchain is bringing transparency, is bringing making payments, like he made mention his project using blockchain, using cryptocurrency for payment and also rewarding customers. So while we wait for him to be back, if you have
I
questions,
can hear you. Can you
any
hear me?
questions or any comments about this conversation, please do wait to drop it on the comment section. Very soon we'll be doing justice to that, taking some of your comments and questions. Let's go for a short break. It is a very short one. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. We'll be right back.
Lee, I can't make out your audio, but I can see you, but
Can you
I
hear
can't
me?
make out your. Yes, I can hear you
Can you
now.
hear me now?
I I
Okay, I
can
was
hear you
trying to
now.
get your opinion on how blockchain is making impact in the e-commerce sector. I know the blockchain is bringing security, payments, and
Yeah.
transparency on board. How is he achieving that?
Yeah, just very quickly. So, I mean, blockchain with its use cases, if you remember, I pointed out challenges in some of these poorer regions, right? We have the payment gateways that are fragmented, especially even across Africa. We have M-Pesa and all whatnot, but the transaction costs for these individuals are some things that a lot of these artisans or small businesses can't afford. That's one, and a lot of them are fragmented. So, for example, M-Pesa might be working in Kenya, it might not be working in Zambia, it might not be working in other countries, right? But leveraging blockchain and cryptocurrency, that is a global currency, right? You can trade that, you can use that to conduct business anywhere across the globe. and you can receive in in pretty much quicker time. Unlike if I'm doing a wire transfer, I do a wire transfer from here, it's probably going to take 3 or 4 days before someone receives that same transaction in another country, right? So leveraging blockchain towards e-commerce, because e-commerce is conducted in real time, right? And you want to um, uh, uh, be competitive in that field. So have leveraging blockchain as a using cryptocurrency helps that. From a from a security standpoint, then you have to now that becomes tricky, because again, when you look at the e-commerce space, you have to then integrate that into a blockchain network where you'll now become a DAO at that point. But we're not ready yet. Africa is not there yet to drive that kind of technology, because one, we still have a lot of people who are still skeptical about using cryptocurrency, who don't even understand the technology around blockchain. But we're getting there. So slowly, as we start transitioning into that space, then that's when you can truly see where you can truly leverage blockchain to drive that level of security. However, in saying it, our e-commerce space, we're going to leverage smart contracts in the distribution of our community tokens across our buyers and our sellers, and even micro workers who will be working to make sure our ecosystem is sustainable. So that's where again we leverage blockchain, because in leveraging in rewarding or incentivizing people, you want to leverage that type of technology, especially when you're delivering or airdropping tokens or cryptocurrencies to people who are keeping your ecosystem sustainable. So that's a key thing in there. And in terms of transparency as well, then you now start looking at the whole DAO aspect. But as a business, that where we are incentivizing people, our investors, our token holders want to make sure that we are transparent in the way we conduct businesses, right? So Afforma, through the partnership, because Afforma is affiliated with our e-commerce platform, which is Celitic, we are obviously going to leverage, Celitic will leverage Afforma's tokens to incentivize people. So I'm sure our token holders would want to see if we are truly leveraging our tokens to drive that incentive program. And that's where the transparency kicks in, because then we're leveraging wallets that are visible to anybody across the globe, right? So that's where the transparency kicks in, and that's where blockchain is highly critical in delivering that feature.
Okay, thank you very much. We've been able to go through understanding what e-commerce is actually is. We looked at some of the challenges, and we also looked at steps. Are we taking the right steps towards handling those challenges? And we also looked at your contributions and some of the ways blockchain is really playing or making impact in the e-commerce sector. Let me look at it. We've been able to talk all this. Are there no challenges associated with blockchain application in the e-commerce sector?
I mean, there'll always be challenges, right? But it comes down to it will come down to the technology itself. Maybe the smart contracts that you're leveraging to drive a certain goal or use case within the e-commerce space. Now, don't forget, leveraging blockchain into e-commerce is still something very unique, right? We don't see a lot of that, right? In fact, we are the first across the globe to actually leverage blockchain towards the handicraft e-commerce space, right? So you don't get to see a lot of blockchain projects or crypto projects solving real world issues. You tend to see them a lot when it comes to DeFi projects, GameFi projects, right? But we are looking at leveraging blockchain and crypto towards solving real world problems. So you don't tend to see that a lot. And maybe that's where we are looking at bringing that into that space. And probably I want to use the word, maybe we can be your guinea pigs to actually see how this is going to play out at the end of the day, to see what challenges we might face. But at this point, I think it really comes down to the technology is sound, right? It's how you leverage the technology to drive what you're looking at doing with the e-commerce space that would then determine if there are challenges associated with it. But at this point, I don't necessarily see one. I think the bulk of the challenges comes on the operational or logistic side of e-commerce.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We don't have much time on our side. Let's go for a quick break. Let me be able to check if there are some questions from our audience. Then we'll be able to take them and we'll wrap up the show. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Brought to you by OKX cryptocurrency exchange. So we've been able to go through this topic, part of blockchain in the e-commerce sector. So let me be able to get some questions. We just have some questions here from our audience. I have a Shark Tech allow. Okay, this is a comment. Allow this show, but sometimes it would be good if OKX do some airdrop or giveaway in this show for us. Okay, let's go to the question that he is asking here. Talking of e-commerce, how can blockchain handle deliver and high charges?
So in terms of high charges, that's again where we leverage cryptocurrency as an option for payment, right? Now, if you look at what it will cost to pay an artisan or to buy a product, right? For example, when you have to do go through a clearinghouse or leverage fiat for some of these payments, you're probably talking about 3% or sometimes or more, right? To actually conduct these levels of business in terms of payments, right? Now, when you now leverage cryptocurrency as an option of payment and your transaction fee is pretty much a fraction of 0 point something percent, right? That's significant, right? Because now if I were to if a payment gateway were to charge me, for example, 3%, let's take for example Flutterwave or Stripe were to charge me 3% to conduct a business, someone has to pay for that. I either swallow that cost or the artisan swallows the cost, right? So for us, that's where cryptocurrency comes into play. Now, if we leverage a payment gateway using crypto and people can pay using crypto, it benefits the buyer and it benefits the consumer, the artisan or the vendor at the end of the day, right? Because now you're talking about a fraction of a dollar, like we're talking about 0.5%. That's a lot of money that still stays in the pocket of our buyers and on our vendors. So that's the key thing here.
Okay, thank you very much. That's half the question that we have so far, and that's how far we can go on this show. Very interesting conversation, though we have some hitches, but we will be able to work on those later on. So thank you very much, Eric Osora, founder former, for joining us on this show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for our audience. Thank you also for joining us on the show. You know how we do it. I'll come your way every Saturday, 8 p.m. West African time with interesting topics and also guests. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. I'm your host, Liu Chamon Harry. See you next week. Bye for now.